Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Helen McGrath, Head of Public Affairs, and Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor.
Hi everyone.
Now straight in this week, Dennis, the new Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill is getting a lot of interesting commentary. What have you got for us?
Well, yes, Helen, there's a lot in this bill for our members with some radical proposals for our planning system. Here's the story. A regular conference speaker and one of my favourites is Bob Pritchard, who is with our corporate partner Shoesmiths. He regularly speaks on planning and regeneration and will do so again on day 2 of our spring conference on the 7th of June. In his latest LGL article, he focuses upon that new Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. As he states, the bill aims to reverse geographical disparities between different parts of the United Kingdom by spreading opportunity more equally. It's a lengthy but ambitious bill, and in his article, Bob identifies that there are 3 underlying themes that run through the proposals. First of all, there are measures to further advance the localism agenda. Draft legislation includes proposals for a neighbourhood priorities statement intended to provide communities with a simpler approach to the expression of planning policy. The bill also includes provisions to introduce a highly controversial street votes system that permits residents to propose development on their street and hold a vote on whether it should be given planning permission. However, Pritchard observes that the proposals for neighbourhood planning also reflect another theme that permeates the bill and which is at odds with localism, namely reducing the influence of local democracy in key aspects of planning decision-making. The next theme Bob notes is the attempt to take forward the less controversial proposals set out in the 2020 Planning White Paper. The bill will require local planning authorities to have a design code in place covering their entire area. Proposals to digitise the planning process contained in the White Paper are also reflected in the new bill. The bill proposes the introduction of a new mandatory infrastructure levy, and significantly, the new levy will fund the provision of affordable housing. Finally, there is a raft of proposals in the bill that are intended to improve the operation of the current planning regime by strengthening powers, addressing gaps and closing loopholes. These include reforms to enforcement, including the introduction of enforcement warning notices. Heritage protection is also to be enhanced with designated heritage assets, such as registered parks and gardens, World Heritage Sites, protected rec sites, and registered battlefields, which are all to be given the same statutory protection in the planning system as listed buildings and conservation areas. Now, there are several other aspects raised in the article which is well worth a look at. Meanwhile, Bob Pritchard is covering other topical planning issues on day 2 of our spring conference on the 7th of June, and this will be available to watch live or on demand.
Now, DLUC held a Teams broadcast on the 12th of May, attended by 5,000 people, on planning in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. And the government's policy note on Levelling Up and Regeneration, further information, was published on the 11th of May and available now on the .gov website. Moving on, councils administering disabled facilities grants need to ensure their processes are transparent and accountable, the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman has said. The Ombudsman has issued the reminder following a complaint about Birmingham City Council, in which a family including a child with disabilities was left without the home adaptations they needed because of confusion around who was responsible for the work. In most areas, councils provide a grant for people to commission their own builders to complete the work. In Birmingham, the council provided the grant and had a list of approved contractors. But the Ombudsman found the authority did not have the policies and procedures in place to say what its responsibilities were for any work carried out. This meant when the family's development ran into difficulties and the family had concerns about the quality of workmanship from the builders contracted by the council, it was not clear what action the council should take to investigate the concerns and what it should do if it was satisfied the work was of an appropriate standard. Michael King, the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, said, because of a lack of transparency in its process and contracts, it became unclear whether it was the council or the householder who was responsible for ensuring the contractor's work was up to standard. So take a look at your own procedures to ensure that you don't run into the same difficulties. Now, Dennis, I understand you have a quiz question for us.
Helen, yes, I do. Who is the new Minister for Brexit Opportunities and Government Efficiency? And why does it matter to us? Here's the answer. The Right Honourable Jacob Rees-Mogg is rarely featured in our podcast, but he does so now because he is in charge of making Brexit work. And making Brexit work apparently now requires a new procurement bill. He is now the new Minister for Brexit Opportunities and Government Efficiency. So what is the government planning exactly? Now, in his latest announcement, Rees-Mogg identifies 9 headline benefits of the new bill. These benefits are described as benefits when compared to the existing EU procurement regime. I hope my scepticism does not become too apparent, but I'll concentrate on those benefits that concern us in particular. First, taking back control of public money. The EU has 4 regimes for procurement. Having left, Rees-Mogg says that we can now replace this with a single regime for everything from paper clips to tanks, reducing administrative costs and driving up competition. Second, slashing red tape and driving innovation. Yes, that old chestnut, slashing red tape, is with us again. More than 350 complicated and bureaucratic rules govern public spending in the EU. Rees-Mogg says that removing these and creating more sensible rules will not only reduce costs for businesses and the public sector, but also drive innovation by allowing buyers to tailor their procurement to their exact needs. 3, making it easier to do business with the public sector. The bill will create a single digital platform for suppliers to register their details that can be used for all bids, while a single central transparency platform will also allow suppliers to see all opportunities in one place. One other interesting benefit of the new bill is this one: effective crisis procurement. The bill will introduce new competition processes for emergency buying, reducing reliance on direct rewards while retaining the ability to act at pace in times of crisis. Now, if you're a commercial lawyer in local government, as I was at one time, these announcements may surprise you or disappoint you, or both. But it is hard to discern amongst all of this stuff any real basis or justification for the removal of the current system in order to achieve these perceived benefits. But of course, we need to see the detail. Leaving the EU gave us the freedom to change many things, but the real challenge for this government is to demonstrate change for the better. I was going to end it there, but there's now a postscript to this item. The bill has now been published and will be posted in the next bulletin.
Well, I'll look forward to that, Dennis. Now, reported in The Independent, an amendment to homelessness laws states the 6-week limit homeless families can stay in B&B accommodation will no longer apply to refugees who have fled from Ukraine and Afghanistan. A survey by the LGA at the start of April revealed that 144 Ukrainian households had presented as homeless across 190 councils since the start of the war. The number is believed to have risen since then, but the government has not published the data it holds. So this took a little bit of digging, but I'm pretty sure this article is referring to the Homelessness, Suitability of Accommodation Amendment England Order 2022, which comes into force on the 1st of June and amended the Homelessness, Suitability of Accommodation England Order 2003. Now, the most salient section of the 2022 order is at section 4, subsection 2D, which states, by way of exception, did not have a right to occupy accommodation in the United Kingdom for an uninterrupted period of 6 months or more in the 3 years prior to the date on which they arrived in the United Kingdom. Now, this comes at a time where community organisations are reporting that growing numbers of refugees are being made homeless after relationship breakdowns with their Homes for Ukraine hosts in the UK. Other factors cited include costs, personality and cultural clashes, misunderstandings, and communication problems. The LGA said that there'd been a concerning increase in Ukrainian arrivals presenting as homeless, and is urgently calling for a rematching process so new arrivals are not left in limbo. So Dennis, you do come up with some unusual stories. What's all this about grannies, glue, and a council meeting?
Apparently, Helen, some protesters became attached to the furniture at a council meeting. Here's the story. You'll be glued to this one. BBC News reported last week that security has been stepped up at a county hall after two women glued themselves to a table. Giovanna Lewis and Annie Webster, who called themselves Grannies for the Future, were described as anarchists by council leader Spencer Flower. During their protest, they read a statement berating the council for its lack of action on climate change. Security locks have now been fitted to the council chamber doors in Dorchester. Councillors have also been issued with guidelines to follow should there be any disturbances at the next meeting. A briefing note issued by Dorset Council Chief Executive Matt Prosser said a decision whether to call the police will be made by the senior officer in attendance in consultation with the chairman. He added, as soon as the chairman adjourns the meeting, members should leave the room immediately and should not engage physically or verbally with people causing a disturbance. The chamber can now only be accessed via ID badges. Now, the accompanying BBC photos of these protesting grannies didn't suggest to me that they were anarchists. Do you have anarchists in Dorchester? But they certainly did bond together for the sake of climate change.
Oh dear, moving swiftly on. Taken from the LGA update, the Public Accounts Committee just over a week ago heard from senior Department of Education officials on the government's SEND review. The panel included Susan Ackland Hood, Permanent Secretary, Indra Morris, Director General of Families Group, and Stephanie Brivio, Acting Director of Special Education Needs and Disabilities and Alternate Provision. On the government's 2014 SEND reforms, Permanent Secretary Ms Ackland said that we didn't spend long enough and think hard enough about the practical implementation of those reforms and how we could make sure that the intent was followed through. The officials all stressed that the DfE aims, through the current reforms, to provide clarity and consistency with a focus on setting out what good looks like to support local authorities with implementation. At the heart of this approach, new SEND partnerships, which will be convened by local authorities, will be supported by the DfE's National Delivery Board and national standards, against which SEND partnerships will be held to account. Now, there is of course the SEND Green Paper, which is currently out for consultation and closes on the 22nd of July. But this is a huge issue which has been vastly affected by COVID and of immense importance, as what we're talking about here are children and their future life prospects. Now, of course, Dennis and I are off to Durham this week for the LLG Spring Conference and LLG Awards. You looking forward to it, Dennis?
I am indeed, Helen. LLG's Spring Conference, quite simply, has excellent speakers, and LLG conferencing is always topical. And I'm delighted it's in Durham. There is nowhere quite like Durham City. Delegates will have plenty to see and do. The cathedral is a must-see, of course, and Durham has a vibrant nightlife that university students just love. And Durham is in the news this week as a finalist for the City of Culture 2025, and the result is due at the end of this week.
Well, never fear if you aren't able to attend, because we will provide comprehensive coverage of who's who and what's what for the conference live on social media and in our special bulletin edition the week after for a leisurely read. And on that note, that's it for another edition of the podcast. You can read more on these items and many more besides by going to bulletin number 18, available now on the LLG website. So it's goodbye from me.
And from me too.
Thank you for listening. Have a good week, everyone.